One of these men is a highly respected New York attorney, Lucas A. Ferrara. The other is a self-proclaimed man of the people, known as Mert Roberts. Their aim is to discuss the hottest issues impacting our city, state, and nation. Fasten your seatbelt. Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live, starts now on AM 970. The
Time it is. No, it's not that show. This isn't Howdy Doody, although it does feel like it sometimes. It's time for Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas live. This is Lucas Ferrara, and if you're new to the show, welcome. If you're returning to the show, welcome back, and thank you for your support, because without you, we'd be nothing. Be sure to call in and say hello, would you, please? 866-970-9622 is our private number, just sharing it with you only, so feel free to call in while we're live and say hello. Your participation is welcome. Now, since this is show number three, we'd like to remind you of our format, which will primarily consist of talk and interviews. We're going to speak what's in our hearts and what's on our minds. So be forewarned, our content is not for the faint of heart. And each week we'll offer a few special guests. And today we'll be chatting with Pamela Gail Johnson and Wendy Lyons Sunshine. Now, just in time for Happiness Happens Month, Pamela Gail Johnson is the founder of the Society of Happy People, and she'll be joining us a little later this first hour. She's been in a whole bunch of magazines: Glamour, Harper's, People, Red Book, USA Today, The Washington Post. She's been on television, a bunch of programs on CNN, even Good Morning America. She's coming on the show tonight to talk about her new book, Practical Happiness: 4 Principles to Improve Your Life. Get ready, people. I'm sure happy about that interview, and I'm sure you will be too. Around the second half of the second hour, Wendy will be joining us. She's an award-winning writer and journalist who has authored The Connected Child, Bring Hope and Healing to Your Adoptive Family, a bestseller that's been translated into multiple languages. She also wrote Raising the Challenging Child: How to Minimize Meltdowns, Reduce Conflict, and Increase Cooperation. You try saying that 10 times fast. She blogs about animal welfare and the human-dog dynamic and has written for a number of publications. And she's coming on this evening to talk about her new book, Tender Paws: How Science-Based Parenting Can Transform Our Relationship with Dogs. How is that for a lineup? In the control room, engineering and producing this program is none other than Alex Garrett. That's Garrett. And the reason I spelled it for you is because Alex has a podcast of his own, which you should give a listen to. It's called One Leg Up with Alex Garrett, and it's on Apple, Spotify. Check out your streaming services. Say hello, Alex.
Good evening, and it's funny you say that because sometimes people spell Garrett with one R or one T, so thank you for clarifying that. And happy Sunday evening.
I wanted to make sure our friends went to the right podcast. Now, I understand we're reaching the end of Disability Pride Month. Did you want to say a few things about that before we go right into the thick of the show?
Well, as you know, 34th anniversary was on Friday, and thank you for giving this a moment. Accessibility is, we're there, but we're not there all the way. So that's why the ADA Day matters so much, Lucas and Mert, because we've still got a lot to go. Can I tell you a quick story? My fiance's in a power wheelchair, and we had to travel all the way from Paterson, New Jersey to Hawthorne on crutches, roller skate, and wheels because the Hawthorne train station wasn't accessible. So if there's any real story for why the ADA exists and needs to improve, it's that story alone, I would think.
Wow, thank you for sharing, and may we always be mindful. Let's accept each other's uniqueness. It's a natural and beautiful part of human diversity, and thank you for sharing. Now, last but not least, I'd like to welcome my esteemed co-host, the Honorable Mert Roberts. Hello, Mert. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing fine. You know what? I want to compliment you because you're a true professional. the way you dedicate your time to writing out these elaborate intros, it's really remarkable how you do it. It's not a joke, because that's very professional of you, and it takes people years to figure out how to do that. And it seems like you might be writing your own stuff. You know, these people usually have writers to prepare all these statements, but it seems like you're doing this on your own. So I want to give you credit for putting in the time to give the information to all the listeners. To shout out Alex, and congratulations on being engaged. I didn't know you were engaged, Alex. Congratulations on that. I'm glad to hear that. That's wonderful that you're getting married. But I want to give a lot of credit to you, Lucas, because you just put that all together beautifully. Now let's get to the show.
No, thank you. And Mert,
you mean that wasn't part of the show, Mert? What are you saying here?
You know, Mert is the radio personality. I'm new to radio, so I've been very fortunate as a writer. I did this all myself. Look, I respect the listeners, and I respect the audience, and I think they need, first of all, to understand what the show is about, where it's going, and who the people are. And why not celebrate each other? Hey, this is the way to do it. Look, to get into the thick of thanks, Mert. To get into the thick of things, okay? I want to talk a little politics before our first guest gets on. I know it's going to be a bit of controversy because it's about Kamala, and I don't know. My opinion is I think that we're witnessing a coup. I mean, the overarching question tonight is our democracy in peril? You've got a party, okay, that pushed out this nominee, pushed him out, Biden, and handed the reins over to Kamala without any primary debates, voter participation, or the DNC allowing any of the Democrats on the ballot. This has led to questions about the integrity of the entire process. What do you guys think, Mert?
Well, you know, before I go, I'd like to get Alex's thoughts so we can get him going, and then I'll give mine afterwards. If Alex would like to comment, I would like to give him the floor first.
So what
before
about
I go.
The integrity? What about the integrity or lack thereof, Alex? Don't you
Well,
think
look,
this whole
if
thing
you
stinks?
Of course it does. If you threaten the current president, Joe Biden, with 25th Amendment, which I kind of said they were going to do, now we know it was behind closed doors, according to sources. But if you're going to do that, is it really the voters' choice? That's the big question, I think, surrounding all this. Is it the voters' choice to have Kamala Harris on the ballot? Because
no, not as president.
Exactly.
Yes,
so
yes,
there's
for vice president, absolutely, but not. She was not vetted by the voters for the office of president. And my friends, last week, Alex was the one that brought up the 25th Amendment. Kudos to you, Alex.
I'll take off my tinfoil hat, or should I leave it on? I don't know.
Yeah, I think you should leave it on because the aliens might want to reach you and send some additional messages for next week's program. But the rumors have gone wild. I mean, some not so reputable outlets and some reputable outlets have been reporting that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries gave the okay to Obama to tell Biden that Harris was going to invoke the 25th Amendment. That seems to be the rumor because no one has yet substantiated that or provided any source for that. And for those of you who don't know, the 25th Amendment is a process for replacing the president when the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. So it is a serious, serious challenge. And the rumors are that Biden was told that his legacy would be destroyed and that he would be removed forcibly if he didn't do what he did by resigning. Still not acceptable. Just not acceptable. Bert?
Now, this is what I would like to add to this conversation, because this is when Alex said, should he remove or put his tinfoil hat back on, that's an appropriate statement, because I believe Biden just isn't physically able to continue going forward. I think it's that simple. I think the Republicans are starting to realize that Kamala Harris is a serious threat to win this thing. At first, I thought she might not be such a threat to become the president of the United States. But I think that Republicans are trying to disseminate this type of information to force us to try to figure out some kind of way to maybe remove Kamala Harris, to muck up the process for lack of a better term, so that Trump can have a clear and easy path to winning. Because I thought this assassination attempt would have a bigger impact. But the problem with the 24-hour news cycle is that we've quickly moved on to other things. The Olympics is going on right now. Kamala Harris is doing real well in the polls. Even on Fox News, they have her poll numbers, and she's doing tremendous. I think the Republic.
But hey, Mert, this is what they call a honeymoon period, though. Let's see how long she rides this. She's not the greatest debater. She's had staffing issues. She had a failed presidential campaign of her own. I mean, come on. This is going to come to the floor. This is going to hit the... People are going to see the emperor has no clothes. Don't you agree?
I think that's wishful thinking on your behalf. I don't know if this for a fact, but you sound like you might be conservative. And I think conservatives are hoping and praying that this honeymoon period that you just termed it is not going to last. But I have a feeling that because it's such a short period to the election, I think this is probably perfect. I think this is probably the best time for this to happen, because there isn't 2-3 years for Kamala to make mistakes and to lose this momentum that she has. She kind of rode behind Biden, rode that wave, and she's new and exciting right now. Despite everything that I believe, because I believe she would have a difficult time because of her reputation in California for locking up people for marijuana. She was very tough on people who smoke marijuana. Very tough. I thought that would have a tremendous impact on her reputation and make people look at her and say, maybe we shouldn't vote her in, or maybe we shouldn't support her. Maybe I will go for Trump this time.
Well, let me ask you something. I'm sorry for interrupting. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, I was going to just say, but it hasn't been that way, and that's actually shocking to me. So, but yeah, you can go ahead. You wanted to say something.
I think it's still early. In fact, we have a few minutes before the break, and I wanted to introduce something. On Tuesday, the 23rd of July, Black Lives Matter issued a press release. Now, I'm not one to align myself with Black Lives Matter. I have some issues with that organization, but they issued a press release which I found interesting, and it had to do with Kamala Harris. And I'd like to read it quickly because I think everyone should hear part of what they wrote here. Now, the Democratic Party elites and billionaire donors are attempting to manipulate black voters by anointing Kamala Harris and an unknown vice president as the new Democratic ticket without any primary vote by the public, which is what we were saying a few minutes ago. This blatant disregard for democratic principles is unacceptable. That's what we were saying a few minutes ago. While the potential outcome of a Harris presidency may be historic, the process to achieve it must align with true democratic values. We have no idea where Kamala Harris stands on the issues now that she's assumed Joe Biden's place, and we have no idea of the record of her potential vice president because we don't even know who it is yet. Very powerful words, and I'm going to go on the record and say I happen to agree with that statement in its entirety. Guys?
Well, it's interesting how we will align with people when they agree with us, but the way I see it, Black Lives Matter is an amazing organization. I don't have a problem with it, but I think that they're trying to extend their reach. They're trying to gain power here. They're trying to take a stand. They're trying to make Kamala Harris bow down to Black Lives Matter. And I don't think they should be doing this right now because it's going to blow up in their face. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to establish themselves in a position where they have some kind of say, or whoever. They have a say at who will get these nominations. They want to have a say into the President of the United States. And they're taking their opportunity, and I give them credit for trying to do this, but I don't think it's going to work. What they're trying to do...
Hey, Mert,
Go ahead.
don't we all want to say? Isn't that the
And
what we're saying a few minutes?
And that's what I think they're trying to do. They're trying to have a say when it really isn't going to work, because we all understand the scenario, and they're trying to act like this is a thought out plot, or this is this has been in the works for years. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people really thought that Biden would bow out. They thought he was going to try to go and finish this thing out, regardless if he had a good shot at winning or not, because he stated himself that he was going to try to do that. But I think the fact that he bowed out rocked everybody, even those who expected it.
Yeah, but Mert, I think the ugly reality is people have known about Biden, his health issues, his competency issues for a while now. This was not a surprise. I think what many pundits are saying, that I happen to agree with, is that as they saw Biden drop in the polls and a Trump victory was becoming more and more apparent, they decided to dump him. But this dumping is a coup. It's against the will of the American people. If they had an issue with Biden, and this includes Kamala, who lied to us about Joe being okay, everything's okay, and this was all distortion, fake or deep fakes, or whatever you want to call it. Shame on her for supporting that.
Well, what would you have her do? Would you have her come out and go against the guy who put her in that second seat and say, no, he's unfit, he should not be president, we should start the processions for the 25th Amendment, whatever the processions is to get that started, we need to get this guy out of here? I don't think...
I am not an expert. I'm not a political expert. I'm just expressing my opinion. But, ethics. There's something about ethics and speaking the truth.
In politics, your ethics often have to take a backseat. They often have to take a backseat to what actually works. And if Kamala would have came out and said something, I believe she wouldn't be the person who everybody's endorsing, because she would have shown weakness, and that weakness would have been perfect for the Republicans, because they would have been able to sit there and say, look at the Democrats, they can't even elect somebody who can handle the job. Donald Trump's our man.
But don't get me wrong, Mert. It's not just Kamala. It's Nancy Pelosi. It's Chuck Schumer. It's Hakeem Jeffries. Biden's my man. I'm behind Biden. All while he was going through this cognitive decline. They all lied to us. So
well,
I'm concerned, they should suffer the consequences for perpetrating a lie.
I give everybody one. I want everybody to go out and do this tomorrow. Go out and go against your boss and see how that goes for you. Just do it. Hey, you might be right, Lucas, but go ahead and go against your boss and see how that works for you.
Well,
maybe you'll get
I happen to be the boss of my company.
See,
so I don't have to worry about that. But we're talking about leaders, political leaders, who should be held accountable to the people. It's different than working for someone. Of course, if you don't like your employer, Mert, you leave. If you can't change it, if you can't go to HR, or HR can't help because it's nothing illegal or nothing, then you leave. You find another job if possible. But this is politics. This is our life. This is our country. And they're playing games. Not acceptable.
And these are politicians who want to get reelected and keep these positions. And if you're telling them to sacrifice their political careers for your well-being, listen, you have a lot more faith in politicians than I do, because I don't think that's how politicians operate.
But before we go to the break, Mert, look, what I'm suggesting is they should have come out of the woodwork much earlier. If they had an issue with Biden, they should have come out earlier. Allowed, as Black Lives Matter saying, they should allow other candidates to get on the ballot. They should have allowed a debate. Had they held a debate, this issue would have come out much earlier. But no, the DNC protected. They should suffer the consequences.
And remember, real quick, that's the same DNC that hit a dozen or so ballots, right, for Bernie Sanders back in 2016. So I'm not surprised.
Bernie for Hillary. Yep, that was a different conspiracy. But we have to go to a break, and we're going to be coming back with our first guest. So stay tuned, because we're going to be talking about happiness.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate, on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate. Imagine you're relaxing on the sky deck of a beautiful yacht as it cruises through New York Harbor. The iconic skyline creates a picturesque backdrop as you sip a delicious summer cocktail, finding refuge from traffic that plagues the tri-state area. Sound too good to be true? All of it can be yours on board the Atlantis luxury private yacht, fully insured and Coast Guard certified. This family-owned and operated 3-deck mega yacht is the ultimate venue for your wedding, anniversary party, birthday, corporate event, bar or bat mitzvah, you name it. Captain Fred and the Atlantis crew will make any event unforgettable. Food and service are excellent. Guests can board at several locations throughout the tri-state area. Call Captain Fred at 212-633-1231 to schedule a private viewing of the Atlantis. 212-633-1231 or visit NewYorkCruises.com.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by to answer your questions for free. Call now and find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-504-8790. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell everyone listening who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me here. It's always nice to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now. 800-504-8790. You'll find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now. 800-504-8790.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
God bless the USA.
If you're a business owner and a listener to AM 970 The Answer, you might not realize that the conservative news and talk content that you enjoy is advertiser supported. Our loyal audience loves to do business with the advertisers who make our programming possible. Now, it probably won't surprise you that there are some advertisers who avoid AM 970 because they don't like what we do here. That's their loss, because our listeners are eager to support advertisers who support our conservative programming. To learn how to reach our audience with your business's message and support this station, please contact our General Sales Manager, Laura Schaefer, at gsm@nycradio.com or call 212-857-9639 or click on How to Advertise at am970theanswer.com. That's am970theanswer.com. And remember, when you advertise on AM 970, our loyal listeners know that you care about our programming as much as they do.
AM 970, The Answer. Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Lucas Ferrara, and you've been listening to Alex Garrett and my co-host, Mert Roberts, and we were chatting about the latest political brouhaha. But now we go to our next segment, and I'm really happy about this, literally and figuratively. Pamela Gale Johnson, who's the founder of the Society of Happy People. I'm going to ask her about that. She's going to be joining us in a few minutes. She's been featured in Glamour, Harper's, People, Redbook, USA Today, The Washington Post, and that's just a few of the publications she's been in. She's been on a bunch of TV programs on CNN. She's been on Good Morning America, and she's joining us tonight to discuss her new book, which I'm really fascinated to hear about. It's called Practical Happiness: 4 Principles to Improve Your Life, which is published by Simon & Schuster. Pamela, are you there?
I am here. How are y'all?
Doing good, doing good.
Pamela, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, I want to wish you a Happiness Happens month. What the heck is that?
Well, I guess it was closer to 26 years ago now, I started something we were actually called for the first 20 years, the Secret Society of Happy People. And to kind of celebrate our first birthday, I was like, I want to do something fun for our first birthday. And somebody said, hey, I don't think there's any happiness holidays. So we actually started with a day it was actually originally called Admit Your Happy Day. And so we were just trying to get people to talk about their happiness when they actually are happy. We don't want you to pretend to be happy if you're not. And so we're celebrating our 25th. It's evolved to be called Happiness Happens Day now. And then the following year we expanded it to a month. So because everybody couldn't participate on the day, so they wanted to have the options of the month of when to celebrate. So we wanted everyone to be happy.
And Happiness Happens Day is August 8th, if I'm correct. I did a little research. How about that?
You are correct. So this August 8th, it's like our silver anniversary.
Wow, congratulations to you and happy anniversary. And then you have many, many decades more of happiness. Let me ask you something. I read something interesting about you, and I want you to share it with Mert and Alex and our listeners. Apparently, you got your start because advice columnist Ann Landers, who was very, very popular for the young people out there who may not even know who she is or was. She was a very popular advice columnist, nationally syndicated. Mm-hmm. She was all over the country. And apparently, Ann Landers was telling people that they should keep their happiness to themselves. And you didn't agree, so you sent a letter, and she ignored you. Can you give us that whole backstory? Because I thought that was fascinating.
Well, so we kind of started in August, and that November, you know how when people actually sent out holiday cards during the, Christmas, Hanukkah, solstice, whatever holiday you happen to celebrate, they'd put a little newsletter in there kind of saying, hey, here's my highlights of my year. So those happy holiday newsletters. Some people put a lot of effort and energy just to kind of give you their highlights. Well, Anne told people in her column that you should not send those happy holiday newsletters because, you were kind of bragging and making other people feel bad. So we had, I think, 40 members at the time. We were so new. And this is prior to social media and all of that hoopla. So she's in 4,000 columns. I had members calling me saying, hey, you need to tell Anne not to tell people they can't send their happy holiday newsletters because she is raining on people's parades. I'm kind of okay, there's us, and then there's Anne. She's really big. But I went ahead and sent her a letter saying, hey, we disagree with this. People have a right to express their happy news. And, I mean, in all honesty, I kind of think not only do you have a right to express it, I think we also need to encourage it more. Because it's so easy to see what's wrong, and it's a little harder for us to see what's right. And there's a lot of science behind that. But so we sent her a letter, and then somebody said, you need to let reporters know. So I did, and we actually ended up with 3 stories, one that was on the Associated Press wire that just went global about the Happy Holiday newsletter fiasco. But the following year, the interesting part was, the following year, although she never directly responded to us, the following year she said to people, hey, people have a right to send the Happy Holiday newsletters. Now, our stance is, if you get one and it makes you unhappy to read it, don't read it. Like, there's not a holiday newsletter place that says, hey, you have to read this. You can ignore it if it makes you, unhappy to do that. But it was a really interesting, time, because I really didn't realize how polarizing those newsletters were and still are. I mean, people have a really strong opinion.
Do you really think they are polarizing? I mean, as you said, I get them. I guess we all get them. Now, they're not newsletters, they're emails, right?
Yeah, well, they're email. Well, I was going to say, fast forward, in all honesty, our social media has become like a daily Happy Holiday newsletter.
That's right.
Where people post their whatevers. So it's it's heightened beyond once a year. And we do still have, 25 years later, we still have this issue. I mean, I see people say, well, that person's really not that happy. I know that person doesn't like their significant other, or I know this. And I'm like, but that doesn't take away from the fact that maybe they took their kids to dinner and they all had a nice family outing. It doesn't take away that they maybe had a happy moment. Maybe they don't like their spouse. I don't know. But I still am glad they had a happy moment, even if that is not 100% of their life. So I think it's sort of how you take it.
It's amazing. Let me, Pamela, let's start, because we have a few minutes. We're going to take a break in a few minutes, but just please stay on and we'll come back after the break. Can you define for me, I'm partly being facetious, what's happiness? Isn't it really subjective? So how do you define it?
Well, I think it is subjective. So I like to do, my most simple definition for people of happiness, it's when we naturally feel good. And it might just be a fleeting moment that we're happy. Like, sometimes if I finish a project, I might not be cartwheel joy excited, but maybe I'm relieved it's over, or maybe I'm satisfied because it turned out really good. If I'm doing a work project that's taken me forever, and I'm kind of like, so it is very subjective. That's why we have 31 types of happiness in the Society of Happy People world, to help people identify those moments. But if I were to have to say one thing to somebody, I would say, you know what? I want you just to kind of take a Post-it or use one of your devices, whatever you want to do. And every time you notice you're feeling good, I want you just to mark a line down for the day and see how often you felt good, which I think is when you feel happy.
And then what do you do with all those Post-its? Do you like...
I think for people, so DNA-wise, in all honesty, we're sort of wired to protect ourselves. So we're sort of wired to be in this mode of fear to some degree.
That's right.
So
because we wanted self-preservation. Isn't it self-preservation, right?
Self-preservation, exactly. And there are certainly times we need that. Like if the fire alarm is going off in your house or your building, you need to pay attention to that and not ignore it and go, oh, it's going to be fine. Like if it's telling you to get out, get out. Be smart, be safe. And those things happen. But we also don't live in caves anymore. And we're not waiting for predators to come and, like a bear to come eat us.
Well, I don't know. Speak for yourself, because some people say I live in a cave and I'm an animal, but that's neither here nor there. But you're right. We've advanced ourselves. I understand.
We've advanced. Like if there's a rainstorm, we're not necessarily worried about, drowning. We're usually dry if we're in our dwelling, whatever that is. And so, but we're still sort of wired to see the negative first. And
so hold on a second. Hold on. So you mean it's natural to be negative? Is that your theory?
Well, I think scientifically it's proven that it gets into that survival of the fittest. It gets into protection, self-preservation. We do have a genetic component.
You just made me
to
feel
protect
happy.
Ourselves.
You just made me feel happy, Pamela, because I when we come back from the break, I want to talk to you about lawyers. I'm a lawyer. I happen to be a lawyer by profession. And if I may say so without insulting people, this is just my opinion. Lawyers tend to be chronically cranky. So when we come back... When we come back from the break, if you could please stay on, let's talk about chronically cranky and a little bit more about happiness. So stay tuned. Okay. We'll be back with Pamela right after this break.
Over the last 30 years, Newman Ferrara, a New York City law firm, has evolved into a national practice focused on real estate, commercial, litigation, civil rights, class actions, and other complex litigation, representing many of the city's largest property owners, managing agents, and thousands of tenants. Newman Ferrara handles some of the nation's most significant class actions and civil rights matters. Newman Ferrara at 1250 Broadway in New York City. Go online to newmanferrara.com. That's newmanferrara.com. Listen to the firm's name partner, Lucas Ferrara, every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Dottie Herman's longest-running real estate radio program, Eye on Real Estate on AM 970. A real estate lawyer for 35 years, Lucas is a professor at New York Law School and is also a published author with books on real estate and New York's landlord-tenant law. Tune in Saturdays at 10 a.m. to hear Lucas's unique perspective and advice on Eye on Real Estate.
Government debt is now exploding by an unprecedented $1 trillion every 90 days. Think of that. It's a clear sign that our nation's finances are spinning out of control, and it's putting the savings of every one of you at risk. Hello, I'm Lance Wallnow, a news analyst and best-selling author and an evangelical leader. I'm deeply concerned about the impact this runaway debt is going to have on Christians like you who have worked hard to build your own nest egg for your family. To protect your financial future in these uncertain times, you need to diversify with something tangible and proven, like physical gold. That's why I recommend a gold IRA. To learn more, text FAITH to the number 989898, and my friends at Birch Gold Group will rush you a free info kit on how to move your IRA or 401k to physical precious metals, tax and penalty free. So don't wait. Just text the word FAITH to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold IRAs. Birch Gold Group is the only company I trust. There's no obligation. So text FAITH to 989898, and I pray this information helps you achieve prosperity and peace of mind.
This is Joe Piscopo. The following is a medical minute sponsored by my friends at InfuCare RX, InfuCareRx.com, improving quality of life, one patient at a time. This week's medical minute is from Dr. Ashish Kapoor, Associate Professor of Neurology at RWJ Barnabas Health.
Diagnosing multiple sclerosis typically involves your physical exam, including a thorough review of systems and a thorough neurological exam. Obviously, obtaining an MRI to detect lesions in areas of the damages that occur in the brain and the spinal cord. During the workup, we sometimes do obtain a spinal tap, which is a lumbar puncture, for signs of the immune system activity related to the multiple sclerosis. And there's various blood tests we do to rule out other similar conditions that can mimic MS presentation.
This medical minute is sponsored by InfuCare RX, and the information, comments, or views expressed by the guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of InfuCare RX. Please consult your medical professional for any medical questions, opinions, or guidance.
The Caribbean is calling. Dennis Prager here. I invite you to join me on a Bible cruise this November in the Caribbean. Imagine 9 days of basking in the sun surrounded by the stunning beauty of a tropical paradise. We'll cruise to the vibrant islands of Half Moon Cay, Curacao, Bonaire, and more while making unforgettable memories with like-minded travelers. Stroll through Curaçao's iconic pastel-colored shops and snorkel in Bonaire's world-class coral reefs. You'll enjoy some of the most delicious cuisine aboard Holland America's Rotterdam, a fantastic destination itself with riveting shows and spectacular views. This experience is more than a vacation. It's a chance to participate in profound discussions. The fresh insights I will share with you about the books of the Bible and current events should energize and challenge you. Mark your calendars, November 29th to December 8th, 2024. Learn more and secure your spot on this once-in-a-lifetime adventure by calling 855-565-5519 or booking online at PragerBibleCruise.com.
Welcome back to Shake It Off with Mert and Lucas, live on AM 970, The Answer.
So we have been speaking with Pamela Gale Johnson, who is the author of a new book, which we still haven't spoken about yet, but we will. Practical Happiness, 4 Principles to Improve Your Life, which is published by Simon & Schuster. It's available all over the place, Barnes & Nobles, Amazon. Google it, you'll find it. I was checking it out too. And if you go to my blog, nyreblog.com, I'll have links there where you can check out Pamela's book. Now, Pamela, before we took a break, we were talking about how human beings are genetically wired, and we were talking about all these Post-its, and then I interrupted you. So please finish your thought, and then we'll talk about the chronically cranky.
Well, I just think because we're pre-wired a little bit to recognize fearful or unhappy things, we have to sort of teach ourselves to recognize the good things, because we just take that for granted. Like, and this is a simple example. If you're driving to work and you have a ton of traffic, and it's so easy to go in and say, wow, the traffic sucked, it was horrible, I had a bad day. But let's say you went in and got your coffee and your barista was super nice to you and smiled, maybe even made you laugh. You almost forget that before you walk out the door. And so we need to try to have a little more parity between when we're not feeling good about something and when we are feeling good about something.
But how do you do that? You have to be conscious of it. It requires you to think, doesn't it? And many people don't like to think.
Exactly. Well, it requires you to be in touch with how you feel. And I think, like I said, once you get in touch with that, you start making note. Like, once that becomes your habit, like, I am going to notice every time I feel good today, even when you're living in a situation that's filled with what I call happiness zappers, which is in the book, those experiences that take away from our happiness. If you're making that conscious effort, if it's become a habit, like brushing your teeth, to recognize when you feel good, you're going to discover you feel good probably more than you thought you did. We even have a happiness counter that people can print off. And it's listed in the book, where they can go and just, you take an hour and you say, hey, how many of these good feelings did I experience in that hour? But we do have to make a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm going to give happiness equality, because I think of happiness as mental health wellness. I think happiness is just like if you want to be physically well, or the wellness of physical, we eat right, we make sure we exercise, we, if we need to be on blood pressure medication or something like that, we take it so that we're in that wellness aspect of our physical health. The same thing happens with mental health. And we've sort of reframed mental health to be just the absence of problems. And then we assume you're going to be happy. And that's just not true.
So happiness takes work. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, until it sort of becomes a habit. And then once it sort of becomes a habit, you kind of were like, wow, I had, this moment I was just watching the Olympics and I got all happy and excited because my favorite athlete won, or Team USA won a gold medal, yay, or silver or bronze. They're all good. Like, nobody's going to go, oh, that medal sucked. You're going to be like, I got my gold medal. Like, then you just start noticing these things all the time, and you're like, oh, I had these happy moments. But we do have to make effort for it to become that habit.
Let me ask you something, because it came to me, Pamela, while you were speaking. So isn't this like a form of meditation? Like where you give out positive affirmations? So this is a variation of that, where you're thinking happy thoughts. Isn't there a song that goes like that, happy thoughts?
Don't worry, be happy. I think it is a form of that. And I do think, so we can, okay, let's just say you're having a really, like I said, super filled happiness zapping experience. So like lots of things that are going on in your life, like, let's say your house flooded, your job's chaotic, whatever some of these things are. Then you do have to sometimes do what you just said. You have to maybe meditate. You maybe need to go for a run. Maybe you need to take a kickboxing class. you have to do something to manage those happiness zappers, or they manage you. I mean, it's just that simple. If you're not managing, managing what depleting your happiness, it will manage you, and it comes out sideways. And then we go home and we pick a fight with our significant other. We're not nice to our kids. The only person that might not complain about it would be the dog, as long as you feed it, and they just can't share.
We'll be talking about dogs in the second hour, so it's funny that you should say that.
I know.
But let me ask you, Pamela, you've been great. Have you made any happy notes about this interview just thus far?
Well, you're delightful.
You're too sweet.
How do you manage? Because I think being a lawyer is one of those things. People rarely are contacting you because of super happy news. Maybe
that's correct.
Maybe they acquired some assets or something, and they're trying to redo their will, and that could be sort of happiness or their trust. But
I do litigation.
So how do you manage your happiness zappers?
Well, you know what, Pamela? I do litigation, which means I sue people for a living. And a lot of clients are not looking for a happy lawyer to represent them. They're looking for an aggressive, I was going to say dog, but I don't want to insult dogs. But they're looking for someone to fight for them. So being happy doesn't fit the profile, if you know what I'm saying. So it does become a challenge where, you have to have this work face, and then you have to have this private face. So who I am can't come to the floor. It's caused quite a bit of mental conflict. I will confess that to you. But what is chronic crankiness? Because I think I'm suffering from that.
Well, I think your profession might lend to a piece of that, because you're like spending all your time looking at the what's wrong. You're trying to resolve something for your client, which can be extremely satisfying, right? When you get your win. Satisfaction is a type of happiness. And again, that's where I sometimes try to encourage people to rethink how they measure happiness. So I was talking to a woman who ran kind of like a cardiac emergency unit at a hospital. And she was talking about, we have somebody that's coming in crisis. We get them through their crisis. And I actually, as she's talking, it kind of occurred to me, I'm like, one of their challenges with their team is they don't get to really see their success, because their success is that person doesn't come back into their emergency situation because they didn't have another heart attack. They went and lost weight, or they went and did the things they're supposed to do, so they're not having to show back up. And I would think for you, that would sort of be one of those challenges. You have your happiness is kind of an end result.
You know what? You just raised an interesting example. This emergency room scenario that you just brought up. I think that they should be happy that the patient walks out alive, particularly if it's one of these critical care environments, right? So they should be very happy if someone walks out alive. And I have been in emergency rooms, and I am very thankful for the work and the pressure that these people operate under. They are our heroes. So it's interesting that you have to remind them of a happy perspective. I never thought of that. But you know what it is? For lawyers, I win a case, but then the other side may appeal, and then I may lose on appeal, and then I have to take another appeal to go to a higher court, and I may be able to reverse it, I may not be. It's a constant back and forth like a ping pong ball. So fighting that stability is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge for most people, wouldn't you say?
No, I think sometimes it is, because in our professional life, what you said can often be very true. There's this ping pong element to it. I did sales for years and years, and I was trying to get promoted one time for one of my companies, and I asked my boss's boss, I'm like, what would you think of, what's one of my biggest weaknesses? Because that question comes up.
Yep.
And he's like, well, you can be on a sinking ship and you just don't see it.
Oh my goodness, how negative is that? That's negative.
Because I'm always kind of thinking like, okay, well, they didn't let me in the front door, but maybe I can get on through the window or a back door, or keep knocking. And, I never think, okay, they're just saying no, so I need to move on. Like sometimes it's just, it was time to move on. And I didn't always, I didn't want to hear that. I always wanted to say, I know if I could just ask a better question, or I could do something better. And sometimes the answer is really no, and you just don't want to hear it. But it is a ping pong. It is there's a lot of professions. That's one of the things I do. I speak at companies and organizations to help them with getting their employees to be happy, helping their employees find more happiness, because we know happy employees actually they produce more, they're sick less, there's a whole bunch of good things when people feel good about going to work. And so, but there is a ping pong piece that goes with that of,
I think people have to accept, I'm sorry for interrupting, Pamela, but I think people have to accept that that's part of the human condition. Nothing is the same. We're going to go through peaks and valleys. And I think the challenge, and what you're inspiring me to do from this interview, is to remember those positive moments, not to sublimate them, and maybe try to sublimate the negative and bring the positive to the floor. Because I think that is the challenge. Again, you brought up some great ideas. Now, we're running a little bit behind on this segment, Pamela. Is it possible for you to stay and join us for a little bit longer, or do you have to run?
No, I can stay.
Beautiful. So, because I don't want to let you go without hearing about the 4 principles of happiness. You need to share some secrets with us. But your quote before we go to the break: happiness isn't linear. It's not one size fits all. It's also not stagnant. Happiness is abundant, and it's bigger than you think. What beautiful words, Pamela. That's great.
Oh, thank you.
Where did you get that inspiration from, if I may ask?
Well, when I started the society, I was, again, trying to get people to talk about it more. So now we have 31 types of happiness. But initially, one day when I was just playing in my head, I'm like, I wonder how many types of happiness are there, because I was noticing I was working in the mental health field, and I noticed on all these mental health posters, and still to this day it's true, we teach people to identify unpleasant emotions at a rate of about 1/3 pleasant, 2/3 unpleasant emotions. And so we inadvertently, again, teach people to recognize what doesn't make them feel good. And so that's sort of where that whole premise came in at. And also I think people, again, they sometimes minimize being content. Maybe that's your feel-good moment of the day. You wake up, you're content, you wouldn't change much, life is good. So it's not the same kind of happiness as joy. Joy is a real high vibration type of happiness. I think we minimize that. So I think we would be happier if we started, again, just recognizing those moments, big or small, that make us feel good. And in the middle, know that we're going to have those little happiness zapper rainstorms that we have to manage.
And how do you zap a zapper? How do you zap a zapper?
Well, actually, that's part of Principle 2 of the book. It's called Happiness Zappers Are Manageable, and we teach people how to do what we call a zap map, a zapper management action tool. So we teach people that, I would say half of your happiness is about how you manage your happiness zappers. And we divide those into 5 types of zappers, and you can manage them all a little bit different. But managing those zappers, like I said, if you don't manage them, they manage you. And when you think about it that way, it empowers you to be in charge. Now, that doesn't mean you're just not going to have a gut punch zapper. Like we all have somebody we know who's passed away, that when we found out about it, whether it's somebody in our family and we're close to them, or my dad had cancer, he passed away, I knew it was coming.
Pamela, we have a hold that thought, sure? Because we have a break that we have to come to, but please stay with us and we'll join us after the break.
preceding hour of programming, sponsored by Shake It Off Live, LLC.